Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I am your host, Shade Curry. I have another expert interview here for you today. With me on the podcast is Amber Taylor, a fellow coach, a colleague, and friend. Amber is an adventurer, podcast host, and pleasure priority coach. She helps people clear out the muck so they can spend more time enjoying the life they create. And Amber helps her clients fix their pleasure and authenticity and set it as their North Star. She combines mindset, somatic tools, and her own special magic to help her clients revolutionize their worlds by orienting to pleasure. Welcome, Amber. Please say hi to the listeners and tell them who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And hello, friends, new friends. It's great to virtually meet you in your ears today. And I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have. But a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm Amber Taylor, the pleasure priority coach. And I entered this journey not knowing that pleasure was my thing. I've been more on the pain side throughout my entire life. And as I kind of was getting deeper into my own coaching work and tools and learning how things correlate, I saw the correlation between pain and pleasure, between our ability to experience and process trauma and how that directly plays into the joy and the passions that we have in our life. And so I decided to kind of focus more on that angle of bringing pleasure into people's worlds, not just sexually, but non-sexually as well, and including play and joy as the healing tools, I call it like the sunscreen to life.
Yes, that's amazing. And that really ties a lot directly into the topic of this podcast, which is divorce, dating after divorce. And you have been divorced. I think that was our very first conversation. I think when we first met was really around our divorces.
Mm-hmm.
So would you like to just kind of give the listeners a little bit of a background, what happened there with the divorce and how it played out?
Yeah, so I was with my ex for 7 years total. We met my junior year of college and dated for a few years before we got engaged, but I was just so committed to the idea of like, this is my husband. I met him in college. This is just how it's supposed to happen. And everything is supposed to work out from here. And kind of kept that same energy even when things weren't working out. But we ended up getting married during the pandemic, eloped. It was, again, committed, did not let the pandemic stop me. But like I said, I was kind of like ignoring the red flags and really believed that getting married would fix everything and prove my commitment and prove that we're supposed to be together forever. And it really didn't. And I was just so unhappy, like just hated being home. We were really like, we ended up, definitely didn't start that way, but we ended up in like a loveless marriage. Like we did not touch each other. We did not sleep in the same bed. We didn't really talk about anything that wasn't like, are these bills paid? Did you eat? Like we didn't really have any conversations that were just nice and fun and genuine anymore. And it just was so taxing and emotionally draining and traumatizing, honestly. And that's when I found coaching. And I initially came to coaching to like fix my relationship. And then I learned that some people just ain't meant to be together. And I can be happy with myself, happy outside of a relationship, and happier like relationships don't need to be that hard. So that kind of started my journey into getting it. Well, it eventually catapulted into me getting a divorce. I probably hung on for like 2 more years before I was like, no more. Yeah, I could jump into.
What were you so afraid of? You said you were really committed. You wanted to fix it. You held on.
Mhm.
And you know, you're a coach, I'm a coach. So we know that when we're white knuckling something, it's an effort to avoid something that we think is just going to kill us, like something that we're so terrified of.
Yes. I had multiple things I was avoiding. So one, I thought I'd be alone forever. I thought that like this was my person and there would never be anyone else ever. And I was also afraid of just like the kind of tropes of Black love. And my ex's history has been like he's been through a lot. And I didn't want to be another person to let him down, abandon him, leave him, and all the like, you got to keep a Black relationship strong and you got to make it through all the tough times. And like, I thought I was quitting or I wasn't strong enough or like I was avoiding those narratives too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like when you said you felt you didn't want it to be said that you weren't strong enough. And that, I don't know if call it a syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
because I've studied high achieving women in relationships, and it's interesting how many high achieving, brilliant, like you're talking physicians, CEOs, CEOs of private equity firms, like women who are like doing incredible things in the world. How many are in relationships where they are suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Things that you would not believe are happening behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So it took some time to really look into that because I think some of that played into my story as well, which was like, why was I holding on so much? And there is an element of not wanting to fail
Yes.
because we've succeeded so much and we're so good at success and we're so good at fixing things and bringing solutions that the thought that this big area of our lives that we can't fix it is just like devastating.
Yeah. And the whole idea that a relationship ending equates to failure, like that's something I had to decondition myself from because relationships begin and end all the time, all the time. And we look at romantic relationships as if it doesn't last forever, which literally nothing does. But if this thing doesn't last forever, then it's a failure and you're a failure. And it's just like, it's a lot of freaking pressure.
Yeah, it is, especially for, I don't know, a 20-something-year-old or anyone at all, but like, especially when it's your first relationship, your first committed relationship, like that narrative that like you need to choose and you need to choose early and you need to make it last forever really doesn't serve women at all.
At all, especially like coming into yourself, finding things out, and like you meet somebody. Of course, like there's relationships that work. They meet in high school and they stay together forever. But so many people change in that course of time. They want different things. They like events happen and affect people differently, and they can no longer connect in the ways that they used to. And that's just life. And it just means things are changing, and things are changing. That means you're alive. It does not mean that something's wrong with you or you're a failure or whatever. It just means you got breath in your lungs.
100%. So I think when we first met, you were healing from the divorce. I think our conversation revolved around your healing, and now you are a pleasure coach. So I'm curious, how did pleasure play into your healing? Like, did you have an understanding of pleasure before your healing, or did your practice as a pleasure coach like come out of your journey in that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because pleasure was a big part of my healing journey, but I didn't understand it in that way. Like I wasn't consciously like, I'm going to put more joy in my life and that's going to make everything better. But I saw in the beginning and I'll come back to it. But during my relationship, when we were still together before we even separated, we did not have sex like once a year, maybe on one of our birthdays. Like it was not a thing anymore. And I am a very sexual person, touchy feeling person, like even just cuddles, just physical touch is a big thing for me. And I wasn't getting any of it, but I wasn't like, even though I wasn't happy in my marriage, I wasn't going to go outside of it. And I just had to like figure out how to meet the needs myself. And so like my first hurdle, I guess, was self-pleasure and masturbation. And it wasn't something that I like grew up doing. And again, it was kind of that like taboo thing of sorry, my dog is barking a lot. Okay. Um,
We're talking about the taboo of masturbation.
right. So it wasn't something that I like learned to do. Like me and my mom never talked about any of that stuff. I even asked her like about sex before, and she was like, "You're too young," and never had the conversation ever again. So even like masturbation, it wasn't something that I was just like, "Oh, how do people do this?" Like I wasn't asking my friends. I was just like, so I just didn't. And then I'm a grown woman and my needs aren't being met. I'm like, okay, like I need to do something. I need to figure something out. And so I started experimenting with sex toys. And I was like, oh,
These work.
yeah, this is I never felt that. Like I didn't, this is a whole new world. Like it's not a replacement. It's like a whole new world. And then I just started like making the experience more fun for myself. So instead of like hiding in the bathroom or like sequestering myself in like the guest room or like just doing something like where I was kind of shaming myself for doing it, like I started making time. I started planning it out. I started like romanticizing it, like lighting candles, like getting all cleaned up and oiled up and smelling nice, like for myself. And just starting to do the things because they felt good for me. And then, like, of course, I started feeling better. And this was in tandem with my own coaching support and all that kind of stuff. But as I was like growing that relationship with myself, I like, learned how important pleasure was to me, or like me giving it to myself instead of me feeling like I have to wait on somebody else. Somebody else is in charge of this. Somebody else has to know my body better than I know my body. Somebody else that like just completely relinquishing my power to everybody else over my pleasure, over my joy. And I was just like, wait, I can do this. I can take it for myself. So interestingly enough, I started out as a trauma coach and going through that process, getting trauma training and all that kind of stuff, and just seeing how we can continue to orient to pain unless we have something else to like to point to gravitate to. And that's when I learned about like orienting to pleasure, like even after painful experiences, and finding those things that make you feel good, whether they are sexual or not, like just the things that make you feel good and moving towards them. And as I was creating that correlation in my head and in my own life, I was like, oh my God, pleasure is the revolution. Like pleasure is what helps people feel comfortable in themselves, feel confident in themselves, stop ostracizing their power out to other people, stop doing things that they don't want to do just because they think that they need to be liked or loved in this certain kind of way because and somebody else is giving that to them. It's really being able to embrace all of the power that you have inside of you and decide what you want to do with it instead of being at the whims of anything else.
Yes. Oh, where do I begin? Just responding to all of that. That was so good. I think let's start with just the divorce and divorce and the sort of like that pain, like that orienting to pain. I think when you've experienced, like you said, trauma, childhood trauma, divorce trauma, all the things. And I think even the way our brains have developed, right? The way our brains are created, pain is the default,
Mm-hmm.
Pain is the motivator. In caveman days, we would stay in the cave until we were hungry to go out and get food. Like the brain was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm staying in here and I'm only going out when absolutely necessary, right? And so negative motivation, I guess our brain orients towards just naturally negative, like, oh, I have to do this to survive. And then when you've gone through, I mean, those of us in the divorce community talk about survival mode, when we're in survival mode. Like sometimes you're in survival mode in the marriage, or maybe right after the marriage, you're in survival mode because like everything's in limbo, you're in court, there's so much happening. And then the goal is to then go from surviving to thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And the struggle is that your brain isn't like on board. So we think logically, our prefrontal cortex, our intention is to start to thrive, but our brains are designed to keep us in survival mode and to stay, like, okay, looking for pain, looking for what might hurt us, looking for the saber-toothed tiger, especially if we've experienced pain in the past. Like that's the default. And I think many of us just I don't think I knew that. I didn't realize that I had like a default orientation to, okay, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
And I was reading recently about like what some psychologists called automatic negative thoughts, ants, which is kind of like a cute name for it. But yeah, that depending on your experiences, you might just have a negative narrative.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not necessarily a default in our bodies, but trauma can happen so early in our attachment styles, like even in the fetus, even as a fetus in the womb. And so much can happen in the developmental phases, especially from like 0 to 2. And based on who you are, what's happened, what the genes are, how the pregnancy was, if there were any complications or sickness or all those things, they play a role into it. And your body starts responding before you even have cognition of what's going on. And so even for like the simple things of like your needs getting met and how trust is built initially, like a baby crying, and they're like consciously thinking like, they're not consciously thinking it, but like, I can't do anything. I need somebody to help me. I need somebody to feed me. I need somebody to pick me up. I can't see anything. I don't know where I am. I feel alone. I need comfort. And if those needs aren't met, like the body can shut down. So if you cry, your stress is releasing, cortisol is releasing, adrenaline's releasing. And in order for that stuff to like literally not kill you, not make you explode, your body goes into a shutdown. And, all different people have different capacities for this. But then once you start that, especially at that age, and then things continue to happen after that, and your body it then begins to default to that place of going into that shutdown. Or whatever your stress response is, because it's like it starts to get aware of, okay, this stimulus is coming in, I can't physically handle it, so I have to shut down. And then it starts to do that more automatically instead of like feeling out like, oh, is this a bear coming to kill us, or is this a bad grade on a report card? It doesn't make those distinctions. It's just like threat, gotta get out of here. And that's why I also focus on the somatic side, somatic healing, because your body has responses that you're not fully aware of, and really getting in tune with what things feel like in your body, how you respond in certain situations with certain stimuli, and then like understanding there's nothing wrong with you, but then how to work with that energy or lack thereof, and expanding your capacity to experience more, so you don't like automatically just go from the survive to the thrive. You have to condition yourself to be able to like experience the thrive.
Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. Yes, yeah, 100%. And like, what does that look like? I mean, I know for me, when I was going through my healing journey, one of the first things I learned to do was figure out, what am I feeling right now? Just even identifying that I was feeling an emotion and then trying to figure out what it was. Like, it would just feel like this like ball of cotton wool. And there was usually like, I don't know, 50 emotions going on at once. But I was like, okay, let's just identify the ones that we can, write them down, and really like going through this process of saying, oh, I have feelings.
Yeah.
And I need to know what they are, because they are like the signals for what's happening, the good and the bad. Like they've come to give me a message. And so if someone is intentionally wanting to go orient towards pleasure, like what are some ways that we can do that? What are some activities, or what are some ways of connecting with ourselves to say, okay, this is what pleasure feels like to me. This is what feels good. This feels enjoyable.
Yeah. So I think what you were just saying is important to this question as well, of knowing where you're at, because when we're in the survival phase, especially for so long, we can become disconnected to the point where we're not feeling our emotions. We're not like noticing what's happening in our body. And then, like you said, after the divorce, you're like, oh my God, what is this? Feelings? Like, where'd y'all come from? And then it can kind of hit you like a ton of bricks. And when you're not used to experiencing them or noticing them, it's like, you can be like, no, like I don't want to feel these things.
Like just the sensation of a feeling coming up, good or bad. At least I remember it feeling really uncomfortable to experience either one, especially after having been numb for so long.
Right. So like my advice is based on where you're at with that relationship, because to feel joy or to orient to pleasure, you have to start with presence, with really just being in the moment, being in your body. And so I'll start with, we want to create safety for you to experience presence in your body. And what does that feel like? Like, how can you ground yourself? How can you like make your environment as safe as possible? How can you resource yourself? And this can be, friend support, human support, animal support. It could be a weighted blanket, your favorite pillow, a fuzzy sweater, like just getting into a place where you feel comfortable to explore the essence that is you, and just be with it. And when you're comfortable and able to do that, when you start orienting to more joy, it's really asking yourself, what do you want? And then allowing yourself to explore that question, explore, do I like this? Do I not like this? Does this feel good to me? Does this feel safe to experience? And just as you play around and put things in different categories, then you start to expand on them. So, okay, I like to go outside for walks with my dog. Like, that's really nice for me. And then like, oh, maybe we'll try a hike next time, or maybe we'll go out to the lake on the water, and just like expanding on what you already like. And then continuing that process is how you fill your life with your joys.
Yeah. I think I've observed that many people are not aware of just how small their lives are.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm working with clients and I'm like, okay, let's do a self-discovery. What do you love? Tell me 50 things you love. And it's like, 50? Can I love 50 things?
Like 50 different episodes of my favorite show?
Or like, okay, what's your routine? And then when we actually put it all down on paper, they realize that their routine, they see the same 15 people, talk to the same 15 people every week. And they've done that for years. Or their routine is just work and the grocery store and, two other places, and they haven't expanded. And they think they know what they like, but you haven't experienced enough.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have enough variables. You haven't given yourself enough options of what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
Able to actually decide what you like.
Right. And that's where the play comes in and the experimentation and just like doing things just because. Like I was on FaceTime with my nephews, and one is 4 and one is 2. And the 4-year-old was building this Lego sculpture thing. He was super proud of it, showing me on the phone. And then the 2-year-old comes in and just smashes everything. And he's like, having the best time. And my older nephew was like, started crying and stuff. It's like, no, it's broken, it's gone, and like all this kind of stuff. And of course, I didn't say this to them as 4 and 2-year-olds, but it really shows like how quickly we lose our spark for just the journey, the experimentation of it, instead of the final, look what I made, look what I did. And like, we get so attached to being good at something or getting it right or getting it perfect that we just don't do shit just to tear it down. Like just to see how high we could build it up.
Yeah, because we have so many voices telling us what we are supposed to enjoy. You will enjoy this, right? And of course, if you're getting that message from the media, of course, they put up the big house and the fast cars or whatever, so that you then are on this journey. This is like the
capitalism.
Capitalism.
You enjoy everything you spend money on.
Nobody ever shows you like there are no shows where the characters are enjoying their tiny house, unless it's a tiny house reality show, like with their 1-bedroom studio apartment. Like I remember watching Friends and I was like, how are you all affording these apartments in New York City? Because that doesn't look real to me.
Right. Like I was watching it like, oh, things just must have been different back then. But
they weren't. So like, okay, so and I read something recently about triggers and glimmers. Like we're so, coming from divorce or trauma or whatever, we're so used to like, here are my triggers. This triggers me and that triggered me and that triggered me. And the article talked about glimmers. Like, okay, yeah, we've established the triggers and all of the pain. Start looking for the glimmers, the little signs through your day, the little signs as you experiment, as you play, that show you what you like. Little surprises that come. It's like, oh, I find myself here and I find myself surprisingly at peace or surprisingly content, and noting. And I think for those of us who are basically survivors, you have to pause, like you said, be present and notice the glimmers. I think we're so out of our bodies, so hypervigilant, we tend to not take note that something good is happening.
Yeah. And I think with that, a lot of people can make triggers part of their identity. Like, I don't do that. I don't like that. I can't tolerate like all that kind of stuff, instead of seeing it as a thing or a behavior and something that can be changed or healed from. And I was like that for a long time too, just like, I do not tolerate this, like just hard, fine boundaries. And I think I needed that period. But now it's like, I get a lot of joy from seeing glimmers in things that used to be triggers. And just like, oh, I'm different. That's cool.
Yes. I'm really leaning into how neuroplastic our brains are. Like, I can rewire this. I can change this. This thing can change. I can grow in this area. This year I took up acrylic painting.
Ooh.
And I purposely decided not to paint any objects. It's like, I'm not going to, because, I knew immediately if I tried to do that immediately, my perfectionist thinking from high school art classes would kick in. Well, you try to paint that box, but it does not look anything like the box. And I was like, I'm just so abstract. I was like, I just play. I play with the paints and I see what happens. right? And there have been some fun paintings that have come out of it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That looks kind of nice. Like, and really a lot of it is just taking the spatula, the brushes, and just like, playing with
doing what your heart wants to do.
Yeah. So that's been really amazing. I did want to go back to what you talked about, self-pleasure, specifically masturbation and sexual pleasure, because it is one of the most pleasurable experiences that humans have. I mean, I don't know, do we have things that are more pleasurable than that? That's not induced by substances, let's just say.
No.
But I think give or take, it's like one of the ones where it's like you reach that high and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found when I'm working with my clients is that there is this, especially those who come from a background where sex was shamed, and there were a lot of really stringent rules around, sex or masturbation or things like that. And there's this weird situation where the woman is divorced and they have values. So each of my clients, we always talk about, okay, what are your values about sex? When, so that way we can guide your dating journey around those values, and you can, hold to your values, because you can date and find a partner with similar values. So your values are not a problem. However, with my clients who have come from a more, like I guess you could say a background where they want to abstain or as close to abstinence as possible when it comes to sex before partnering, there's this little piece where and now we work through it, but I think coming from a pleasure coach, you might really be able to give some background to what's going on there. So they're like, okay, I don't want to have sex with someone, until we're partnered or until we're married. However, I'm really horny and masturbation is really bad. And what ends up happening when we don't create those guardrails, or when they're not willing to explore self-pleasure, is they're not able to hold space for the journey to the right partner, because then there's this need that comes in. So, they might be on guy number 12 on the way to guy number 25, who's the right guy.
But, good enough.
But good enough, because now it's like, I can't hold it anymore. The dam has burst. And now this is the guy. And I mean, and I've had to do a lot of work to really like explain this and slow them down and say, hey, this is a real thing. You can't wing it. I just always feel concerned about a woman who has values, who wants to wing her sexual journey versus saying, hey, I have this need. It's almost like, I don't want to admit that I have this need.
Right.
I'm going to believe that I can do it.
Up.
Yeah, I want to believe that I'm going to be able to just like manage it. But I find that it comes in and it really impacts how their brains process the dating journey, how they make decisions around choosing the right partner. So could you speak to that?
Yeah. So I would first question, why is masturbation so bad? Because I know the historical context, religious context, and all those kinds of things. But when we step away from the messaging that we were given, and we actually examine what we want and what is important to us, like, I don't see how putting yourself between a rock and a hard place is the best thing for you, and like bottling up everything because if you give yourself your own pleasure, then what? Like, what is the actual fear there? And to me, or in my experience, it's been other people will have these opinions about me, these views about me. It means like I'm a bad person or a bad child of God or something like that. And it's just like, does it really though? So
it really, and actually it does not make logical sense that it's sort of like giving someone else power over your eating, your nutrition. Like we would never do that. We would never say, I can't eat until a man comes into my life and feeds me. Like, we would never say that.
Yeah.
We would never say, like with all of our other bodily functions, we would never hand that over to someone else to be in charge of. At least as long as we, once we became adults, we would never say somebody was in charge of what we could or couldn't eat. or things like that. And I think because this is a biological function,
So
it
yes.
makes sense that like you have power over it.
Yes. And then in that context of like saving yourself for that one person, that one partner, and then you're giving it all to them. Like, I have no idea what this thing is, how it works, but you figure it out. It's yours now. Like, do you really want to give somebody else
And like,
that much control?
yeah. And this comes back to, and are you picking someone who's gone to school to figure it out?
Right.
That's usually what happens. Is like, we're like, okay, nope, I can't figure it out. I'm going to wait until this person figures it out. That person is spending zero time figuring out
Yeah.
your pleasure.
They may not even care. They may be like, well, I'm good. So
Yeah, well, and it's all of this socialization and this conditioning and this narrative that really um, does not take women and minorities, non-binary persons into consideration. That like it really is like, okay, as long as the man is okay, we don't have to think about anyone else. I
mhm.
was watching, I believe it was The Principles of Pleasure on Netflix,
Love that.
and they talk about how like the clitoris, the all of our parts, the whole thing, it was not mapped out in biology books for medical students
Mhm.
until what, 2005 or something. They put it in there, then they took it out for like 50 years. I was like, wait, what is happening?
Yep. And like how I forgot the numbers, but I think it was like 1.7% of the money that's been invested into male genitalia and how it works and what
Mhm.
it cites and stuff. 1.7 of that money has gone into research for females.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always talk to my clients about like, when it comes to like owning themselves and really owning their own reality and
Mhm.
making sure their environments accommodate who they are. I'm like, like 10 days out of the month, you have this thing that happens, right? 10 days out of the month, and you're still expecting yourself to show up, and you're letting people have this expectation of you that you can overwork and
Mhm.
take on anything that anybody puts on your plate. I'm like, 10 days out of a month is 1/3 of the year. The woman
Yeah.
is ovulating, she's menstruating, like all of that is happening. I'm like, wait a second. And we have a world that has been built without accommodations for any of
Yeah.
that.
Nothing is supposed to affect us. Don't you know?
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be perfect all the time, no matter what.
Yeah. So with dating, I mean, my view has been, and my philosophy for my clients, and they adapt this to what works for them, is that your pleasure affects your ability to be fully thriving, your ability to give yourself pleasure the same way you would provide. Like a woman who is struggling financially
Mhm.
is unlikely to be able to make really great dating decisions, because
Mhm.
the man's money will come into play. Like, is he paying for everything? Can he help me? Can he save me? There's that part of it that can come in. So I always
Mhm.
want to make sure like, hey, you need to be thriving financially to make great decisions. It's the same thing with pleasure. Like, are you thriving in your pleasure? Are you thriving in your physical pleasure? Or are you looking to a man or someone to come in and fulfill that need? And if you do, or if you are, it really makes it hard to be sure that you're picking the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like you can have a good time with anybody. You can have a good time with people who are very bad for you. But if you don't know how to experience a good time by yourself, and this is again, sexually or non-sexually, like a nice date or whatever, just because a guy takes you on a nice date doesn't mean he's your man. But if you don't allow yourself to experience nice dates, nice things, nice gifts, nice experiences in your own right, and just somebody else is introducing you to that for the first time, then you start to think like, this is the only way I can get that. This is the only way I deserve that. And it, like you said, you start making bad decisions for you because you're like, I need this thing. I really like this thing. And this is the what I have to exchange for it. Like either my happiness or my comfortability, or like, I don't really like the way that you do half the things you do, but you make me feel good sometimes, so I'll stay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what it means, like the cliche, the saying, okay, you need to be a whole person to truly choose another whole person. I think this is what we're talking about. It's like
Yeah.
you're not missing any parts of yourself.
Exactly.
All the parts of yourself are home. All the parts of yourself are welcome. Your sexuality is welcome. Your pleasure is welcome. Your needs and wants are welcome. Your personality is welcome to you, not to other people necessarily, but to you as an individual. You accept all those parts of yourself and you meet your own needs, which I always feel like adults should be meeting their own needs. Like every adult should know how to meet their own needs. Even if meeting that need is part of knowing how to meet your needs, is knowing how to choose a person to support you in meeting that need.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's like, okay, one of my needs, I don't know, I'm just going to make this up, like traveling. Traveling is one of my needs. I need to know, how do I travel? Right. What do I like to do when I'm traveling? So that when someone comes along as a travel companion, I can say, hey, this is what I like. These are my preferences. You're along as a companion. I need you to know my preferences so that you can accommodate them. You can be supportive of them. And I will try to do the same for you. But if you don't even know what your needs are or how to meet them, you can't teach someone else. You can't adequately guide someone who is trying to support you in meeting those needs. And that this applies to sexuality as well.
That's why I think so many women are not pleased in their relationship, because they don't take ownership of their own pleasures, their own anatomy and how things work and what things like. And they think like, oh, because what my partner didn't please me, I guess I'm just broken or unpleasable or whatever. And it's really like, no, you got to be like to the right, to the left, like slow down, speed it up, stay right there. Don't move.
Right. Yeah. And it helps your partner if you know which way he needs to go, because you've been in there.
Because you've been there. You figured it out for yourself. You know what you like for yourself, because like being in a position with somebody else things are different. They feel different. So having a roadmap that you can follow, that you know, like, all right, I like this. And then if like, it's just another way you can explore and introduce different things. And like starting with yourself, that's how you're able to expand out on of that. That's how you're able to expand on that, and how you're able to like truly take ownership. So you don't get in these positions where you're again offloading your own power or like the responsibility that you have for yourself.
Yeah. 100%. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Amber. This is so good. I know definitely I wanted to, and I think I've had one other conversation around this, but I think you really did an amazing job of like really breaking down all of that. I know just my own religious background and, you could say childhood background, masturbation was just always this thing where it was like, oh, no, and then as an adult, I actually like read the Bible. I was like, okay, so where is this thing in the Bible? Because I actually want to find it.
Yeah. And wait, what? And like the whole thing of growing up too, of how like there was the boys will be boys trope, and like they got a sock on the door, whatever that, like there was always this, they can do it, but we can't, or it means we're fast, or it means we're promiscuous, or, whatever. And I think again, that patriarchy, but taking ownership of our own identity is so important, and teaching that of like, it's okay for you to touch you. Like, don't let other people touch you if you don't want to be touched, but you're allowed to have that relationship with yourself.
Yeah. And if you're not sure, like I would say, if you're not sure, if you're like, hey, I think this is what I was taught, I would encourage everyone to check it out. Because the verse that I was given against masturbation, when I actually read it in context, I was like, this isn't what that meant. What about the guy who was supposed to have sex with his brother's wife and give him his brother's wife children and have children in his brother's name? Right. And so he would pull out. Basically, the guy would pull out. Onan was his name. He would pull out every time so that the wife wouldn't get pregnant. But it was really more about inheritance, right? It was more about the name, the inheritance, who would inherit like the property because it was like not going to be his, like the child, whoever the child was his dead brother's child. It was like a whole deal. So he wasn't masturbating in that sense. He was just like, I don't want to get her pregnant.
Right.
That's
So
all he was trying to do. And I was like,
he was birth controlling.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think this means what they said it means. And so it's really great, like as adult women, for us to say, this is what I've been taught, this is what I currently believe. Mm-hmm. Be afraid to question it. Don't be afraid to say, let me check this out. Let me go find the verses. Mm-hmm. Every book we've read, every sermon we've heard was taught is like another person's ideas. Like, I believe very much in going to primary sources. Okay, where is the original guy who wrote the original thing so that I can make a decision for myself? And I think that's been really helpful for me to sort of like adjust what I was taught as a young person around masturbation and self-pleasure and things like that.
And also, just to say again, change is okay. Even if you believed one thing before and now you believe a different thing, that doesn't mean that you're fake or that you are wishy-washy. It just means that you got a new set of information with your new set of experiences and you made a new decision. That's okay.
And you do get to decide. You do get to make new decisions. I love how one of our mutual friends says it. She's like, circumstances have changed, and so have
I. Yep.
Things have changed, and so have I. Amber, this has been such an amazing conversation. I do want you to sort of like break down a little bit about the kind of work you do, like, because I had never heard of a pleasure coach. I think until I met you, I don't think I've ever heard of one. Now, I mean, I've heard of a few other people, but like, I was like, this is pretty cool. I remember when we got together our mastermind, I was like, break this down for me. What is it that you do exactly? Yeah. So I'm sure some of the listeners are like, so what exactly does she do? Is she like sending me sex toys? Because give us a couple of examples of the kind of work you've done with a couple of clients and the outcomes so that we have an idea what that is.
Yeah, so it's actually funny enough, most of my coaching does not revolve around sex, but it's interesting enough that after working with me, all of my clients say my sex life is better. But that's because of the relationship with themselves. So what I do is, in a sense, general life coaching, but it's really helping people take back their own autonomy, live into their authenticity, figuring out who they are, what they like, what they want, what they don't want. Like the whole conversation we were having today of like, oh, like we deprive ourselves of these things or are deprived of things. And then we end up making bad decisions just to like satiate some needs. And we do that not just in relationships, but in careers, in lifestyles, in families, in locations, and all those different things. So I like help people understand what they really want, detox from all the conditioning they've gotten, connect with themselves, really heal from their own trauma, and metabolize it in a sense that they still have an emotional response to it of like, that happened to me, that's not okay, that's bad, like I don't like it, but they don't have that visceral response to it that like shuts them down or takes them out of account or makes them make a different decision to try and avoid something. So it's really just taking ownership of that, of everything in their life, and being able to expand their window of tolerance of basically what they can tolerate, whether it be the good, the bad, like you said earlier, like even good emotions, like I couldn't process, but like having that ability to experience highs and experience lows without being sent off kilter. So I just help people expand that place within themselves and really turn towards joy in their life, orient to the joy in their life. So I help clients in all different arenas, a lot of relationship stuff. One of my clients, I helped leave her relationship. We worked together to actually prepare for a divorce. Another client, I helped her get into a relationship and really decide like, hey, this is how my last relationships have gone. This is how I've shown up. I know I'm hiding parts of myself, and like just really allowing her to be herself and be comfortable in herself. So then she can attract and be with someone who loves her whole self. And then people with their businesses. I've had a couple entrepreneurs, and people moving to different countries to start businesses, and just really learning how to live life from a place of like, I'm such an amazing badass, and everything I've been through has made me exactly who I am. And that person is so necessary in this world. And I love being her and like really living like it.
Yeah, so good. So good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And where can the listeners find you if they want to partake in some of that awesomeness you just described?
Yes. So you can find me at Amber Taylor Coaching everywhere. Instagram, Amber Taylor Coaching, Facebook, the same. My website is www.ambertaylorcoaching.com. And my own podcast is The Pleasure Priority with Amber Taylor.
Awesome. And you can hear my episodes on Amber's podcast from about, I don't know, it's been about a year now.
Yeah, this is like a year. You were my very first interview.
Yeah, right. So y'all need to check out Amber's podcast. All of her links will be in the show notes. So if you're not driving right this second as you listen to this, go to the show notes on your device and click and follow Amber. Check out her podcast and all of her resources. Amber, it has been such a pleasure to catch up again with you today, and I'll be seeing you around.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Listeners, we appreciate your time and attention today, and we will see you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to shadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.